Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Appreciate you streaming in. We are lucky enough to get Brandon Lee Gowton, the editor-chief, and main cook and bottle washer, doing everything over at Bleeding Green Nation, jumping aboard with us on Birds 365. BLG, how many episodes of The Quarterback on Netflix have you watched?
That's 0 right now. I have to get to that.
Any yet, huh?
Yeah. I'm behind on my watching of many things, that included. But I love the passion you guys are bringing. We're more than a week away until training
July
camp.
14th passion. Yeah, people like when Jody and I argue. We apologize for I don't know. People like it, so at least we can make the people happy. Now, Marcus Mariota, I will say this: when you get to the show, it's a very good show, Brandon. But Marcus Mariota is the third quarterback. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Kirk Cousins. It's Marcus Mariota. I don't know. People are going to like the Marcus Mariota portion. At least he does not come across as well as the other two. Now, part of that is natural. I mean, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl, so everything is copacetic. Best player in football, MVP, yada yada yada. Cousins wins 13 games, goes to the playoffs. Disappointment, but at least they made the playoffs. And Marcus gets benched. Oh, by the way, he got benched the day after his child was born. So that was kind of, I don't know if Arthur Smith is the most tactful person. But then he left the organization, went back to Las Vegas. Ultimately, then he became an afterthought in the show. I guess I shouldn't spoil, but long story short, Brandon, did not come across great. You think that's going to have any relevance to Eagles fans because he's the backup. He's going to be in the background, but you're always one play away.
Yeah, definitely was a weird situation last year. I think the Eagles were kind of more uniquely qualified than maybe some other teams to kind of dive into his background, the connections on their coaching staff. Jason Michael, his former offensive coordinator, included in there. So I think, and some of his former teammates too, even though they added him later, like someone like Olamide Zaccheaus. So, I think they have some insight to that situation, and I think that they feel like he fits. And I think Marcus is at a point here where it's more clear to him. Whereas last year he entered the season as the starter, and certainly had that kind of role. I think he knows he's going into a situation where that is not the case this year.
And he had that role in Vegas, to be fair. And he was, he was fine behind Derek Carr. So just interesting because now it'll be front and center, and maybe didn't come across. And maybe it's unfair because you can edit these things in certain ways. So I think it will be interesting when Eagles fans get to see it, though.
We'll see how it shakes out with Mariota as the backup here in town. And I'll tell you the one thing, you haven't watched it yet, BLG. He's gray. When did Marcus? Wasn't it just like 10 minutes ago? Everybody was screaming, do the deal, trade for the Heisman Trophy winner. Chip Kelly and he are going to be the marriage made in heaven for a decade here in town. Now he's gray. He's just having his first kid and he's gray. What the hell, Marcus? I guess that season took more out of him than we thought.
Well, yeah. He's got a kid now, so you turn gray right away.
Before he had the kid, the kid was just on the way.
A lot of stress, man. A lot of stress.
At least he has some hair, and I say that as someone who is also doesn't have any. That's me too. So
there you go. He's wearing a cap, but you're looking at 3 baldies here. All right, you mentioned that the Eagles were specifically qualified to be able to judge person character and previous issues, and did he or didn't he quit on the Falcons last year. I guess yesterday's news comes as no surprise to the Eagles, and shouldn't really come to surprise to the Eagle fans either, that another lawsuit has cropped up from the car accident that their number 1 draft pick was in. I'm sure the Eagles did and they knew that this was a possibility. When it gets filed, it's going to be attention grabbing, and it's going to spotlight the player in question that much more. Eagles knew that this was a possibility, right? They're ready to roll with any of the punches of any of the legalities that come down with their first round draft pick. BLG.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all know Dom DeSandro, the Eagles head of security, basically, he's one of the best in the business at his job. These kind of things are certainly on his radar. I don't think he's getting blindsided by anything like this. Obviously, when they traded up for him, when they made that pick, they knew there was a situation that came with this. Then there's a reason why he fell to number 9. There's also the civil suit against him that was brought up in May. So, there's some things going on here. And I guess we're just going to have to see how they play out legally.
Yeah, and I got, from the Eagles standpoint, I think the criminal aspect was more important than the civil aspect. I think they were always aware, once you have a lot of money, I mean, that's just part of it. There's going to be a civil suit. And, the issue from a football perspective becomes there, does that, we're just talking about stress, joking around with Marcus having a kid. I mean, there are real life issues. The stress of that, affect Jalen Carter on the field. We just have to wait and see. To me, it was a worthwhile gamble, though. I mean, I think that is the most talented player in the draft. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who went to the Super Bowl, arguably got the most talented player in the draft. I think that's a worthwhile investment. That's a worthwhile roll of the dice. How often are you in a position to get that type of talent when you're that good? And if it doesn't work out, sure, they're going to get killed. But I'll still say, even if it doesn't work out, Brandon, I'll still say that was a worthy pick. Your thoughts from that sort of scenario?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's fair to say, you make decisions based on the information you have at the time. The information is that Jalen Carter, like you said, might be the best, or at least one of the very best prospects in the entire draft. And I also think, you have to add, not that you draft for need, but you have to add in the context. You lost Javon Hargrave. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And not to say that Jalen Carter can just come in and instantly be a 1-for-1 replacement. But to lose Javon Hargrave and then have no real viable, suitable option coming in to replace that production, like to get Jalen Carter was a really big deal, not just for this season, but also moving forward with Fletcher Cox probably, potentially finally in his last year in Philly, to have someone in there for the long term, along with Jordan Davis. Obviously, the Eagles hope that's a big deal.
Let me stay at the DT position then. If Carter is a rookie, and they're not just going to throw him in the number of snaps, like you said, a one-on-one replacement for Javon Carter. So that means you're going to need some assistance replacing Javon Hargrave elsewhere. Is this a potential breakout year for Milton Williams? I know they're not the exact same player, and even in the limited defensive tackle position, as we saw last year with their first-round draft pick, there are specific type of plays and responsibilities you have. You can't just throw all defensive tackles into the same exact hopper and expect them to do the same and play the same. What's Milton Williams' role, and how big a contributor can he be for this team this year?
I think by the end of the season, like in the Super Bowl, the Eagles were using like 6 defensive tackles. So they're going to I think they're going to rotate those guys again and be doing it heavily. So, maybe the sack production doesn't jump up in this major way. He went from 2 to 4 last year. Certainly that's a step in the right direction. I don't know that he's getting to double digits this year, but certainly I think you could see an increase from that 4 number, and maybe more than about the actual stats itself. It's just kind of the impact that you see when he's on the field. I mean, yeah, I think just that whole rotation, it's important that they all step up, because when you lose Javon Hargrave, I don't think it's just as simple as, one guy is going to be able to do that. And when you have Fletcher Cox here, but, he's getting older, ideally you want to play him fewer snaps and keep him fresh in those. You really want this heavy rotation, and I think that's what it's going to be again. So, Milton's going to be part of that. And he's kind of the forgotten man, I think, in a little bit, in that you have Cox back, you have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, the 2 first-round picks everyone's excited about. They even signed Contavious Street, who I think could be on the team, and is coming off a nice little year that he had as a rotational player. So Milton Williams might get lost in the shuffle there when you kind of look at the position from afar, but I think he certainly will have an important role in this team.
You mentioned the heavy rotation, BLG, and the Eagles are so deep. on the defensive line. It's really impressive. You know, I remember going back in this season, I think it was Bucky Brooks, rated the Eagles defensive line the top position group in the entire NFL. Are they too deep? And by that, I mean, there's certain guys, and the one issue I have with the Georgia guys is that you go to Georgia, and when they were in college, they didn't play a lot because they had so much talent. They rotated, very similar, and conditioning was an issue. Jordan Davis has admitted it. That's what he was working on in the offseason. Conditioning, getting in better shape so he can play more snaps. You remember Javon Carter's pro day when he was having all the stress of the legal issues and couldn't finish some drills. We asked everybody about that. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. When I have players like that, I want them on the field a little bit more than the Contavious Streets or the Milton Williams or the Marlon Tuipulotus. Not that they're not good players, and if somebody gets injured, you'd much rather be the Eagles than somebody else. Am I making any sense by saying maybe the rotation is too deep?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to rotate for the sake of rotating, but certainly if you have guys, you know, who can help a little bit and you know, give these guys a break and allow the main guys to go like full steam ahead in a more limited amount of snaps so they can really give you their max. And not only in a given game, but really I think it's about the course of the season and knowing and hoping that you're going to go really deep into the year. And then I think you start to really, you know, increase those snap counts for the star players such as Jalen Carter or whoever really is heating up at that point. And I think that's what it's all about. It's about the bigger picture in mind. And it's kind of an interesting situation for the Eagles in that, you know, I don't think anything necessarily is set in stone here where I think that rotation is going to skew towards whoever is producing and proving they deserve that playing time. So it's not like a training camp position battle necessarily, but it could be this kind of ongoing development as the season goes along.
BLG, prediction question from you. And I know your site does a lot of work with other similar sites in other towns with other teams in the NFL, specifically the teams in the NFC East. How many yards is Matt Breida going to rush for this year as the lead back of the New York Giants when Saquon Barkley says, yeah, I'm not signing this stupid franchise tag?
I think Saquon's going to be back in the fold at some point. I don't know how. I don't know when, but I would be surprised if we're not seeing Saquon. I mean, it doesn't really make sense for players to sit out like that. It's very rare. Obviously, you know, you can point to someone like Le'Veon Bell, but that's just not really. And he said he regretted that, by the way. So
he should. He went from the best running back in football to basically nothing after sitting out that year. That was a bad decision.
I think Saquon's going to be back in due time.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Tough to leave that money on the table.
If we can all agree that it's been tried and failed before, why even go there? Does he really think that the Giants are going to go, oh, man, Saquon might sit out. We better ante up our offer by $5-10 million. Why do they even go down this road if all three of us who know a little bit about football go, yeah, remember Le'Veon Bell? Doesn't work. Go ahead and try. He's going to blow up in your face. Why do they go there? And Josh Jacobs is doing the same thing. He's threatening. He's not coming in Vegas either.
I think it's all part of the game. You know, negotiations take place, conversation happens, deadlines spur action, as people like to say. And the deadline is what for the tag? Is it tomorrow? It's
coming out.
So, you know, I think that's when things start to heat up. Certainly the Daniel Jones contract was heating up right as the tag deadline window was closing. So, you know, I think something will come to a head at that point with the deadline here. And I think we'll see some kind of resolution.
Yeah, it's a deadline-driven league. I mean, that's all the leverage they have, is what I would say, Jody. They don't really have to say you try. It's probably not going to work, but you try it. And then it comes down to you're going to walk away from that much money. And then, as BLG astutely points out, Le'Veon Bell did it. But, you know, that might be more of a reason to sign the franchise tag and just take your medicine and ultimately play. I do think that's going to happen with Saquon. I want to go to the 49ers because you mentioned July 14th. keeps ramping up, man. Zach Gelb's helping out, getting Deebo Samuel to hang up. It keeps talking out. Now we got another report that Brock Purdy's going to be ready for week 1. I don't know why the 49ers keep going down that route. There's no reason to say, he's going to be ready. You have this sort of built-in excuse. I've talked about that a lot, but for some reason they want to put that narrative out there, and we'll see. And none of us are doctors, but from the rivalry standpoint, Shody and I have talked about this. I think it's more band driven than organization driven with the 49ers and Eagles. But why do you think it's ignited to the point it has?
I don't even think so. From my perspective, I don't even think it's necessarily like Eagles fans hating 49ers fans. And I don't even know 49ers fans across the board are like unanimously supporting these kind of players who are saying what they're saying. It seems to me that when it's a pattern, it's like multiple people. You had Robbie Gould, you had Deebo Samuel, you had Jimmy Ward. Like there was a lot of people. And I just said Robbie Gould in there. How are you going to have a kicker like talking trash? I know he's a successful NFL kicker with history, but come on. To me, there's some kind of lack of leadership. I feel like Kyle Shanahan has his fingerprints all over that team when it comes to not just like coaching, but personnel, I feel like in the whole organization. So when you have that and you have someone not like telling them to be quiet, which I think they should do, I think that's kind of a lack of leadership there at some level. And I think it's a really bad look. And it kind of reminds me of, there's these teams sometimes that get obsessed with how their season ends, and that becomes like defined.
Yeah, that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign.
It is. And I would say, like, for recent examples, you could look at the Bills, with the overtime rule and whatnot. They got so obsessed with that. You could look at the Bears, who got so obsessed with their kicker situation after the double doink that they were like practicing kicks from the 33-yard line. Matt Nagy was having them do it in training camp. I think the 49ers are like one of those teams that's like getting a little too obsessed with how their season ended and isn't turning the page necessarily to 2023.
BLG, let me make you the message carrier for the 49ers right now. And if your message was, it looks like Brock Purdy's going to be able to start the first game, would you specifically obfuscate or keep that under wraps like Nick Sirianni to get a competitive advantage by not being forthcoming with either your team or your fan base or whatever, that you don't know who your quarterback is? Or would you be honest and say, all our reports say he's going to be ready for the first game of the season? Why wouldn't we put that out there and help to energize our team and our fan base? How would you handle it if you were the message carrier of the 49ers?
I think competitive advantage is overrated in a lot of ways. But, I mean, if you can find any, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world to obfuscate a little bit, like you said. But I don't know. I really don't believe. I don't know what to make of their quarterback situation because, they trade up for Trey Lance. I think it's very clear they don't like him. And I think it's also maybe clear that he's just not good. And that's maybe why they don't like him. And then also Sam Darnold apparently might be in the mix, which is just a crazy thing to say given his trajectory to this point. So I don't know what to believe fully. It seems like Brock Purdy playing in week 1 is just too soon based on the severity of the injury and just wanting to, make sure you handle that right and not rush it. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Yeah,
it's a strange situation from my perspective. Jody brings up, I hadn't even thought of competitive advantage, but, Nick takes it to a
does it all the time.
Degree. Yeah, it takes it to a ludicrous degree. But in this case, if Trey Lance and Brock Purdy are pretty different styles of quarterbacks, so why not use it? I hadn't even broached that yet. But from my perspective, it's like, why are you putting pressure on this kid coming back from a UCL? Yeah. I don't understand it. And then from John Lynch's aspect, you're the goofball that traded up for Trey Lance. I've been saying this pretty consistently. You have a golden opportunity to say, all right, let's give it one more shot with the guy we did all this to be our future franchise quarterback. And you could say, well, Brock's not ready. Brock's not ready because he's got a torn ACL. You start Trey Lance. If he craps the bed, you pull him when Brock's ready to go and completely healthy and everything's copacetic. And if he turns out to be the guy they once thought he was, that's worthy of the number 3 pick in the draft, well, that's like winning the lottery if he becomes that player, which is odds are pretty long. I think all 3 of us would agree with that, but nonetheless, the whole thing is just strange to me, the way they're handling it. Like, why? Yeah, why? I think Nick is smarter in that aspect than Kyle Shanahan.
I'll paint the picture, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong. And I think you mentioned this here, John. What happens if he's ready by like week 4 and Trey Lance is 3-1?
Yeah.
And he's played well, but not great. Not as well as Purdy did last year. Match the numbers, look at it, analyze it, whatever you want. Not as good as Purdy, but he's 3-1. And now Purdy's ready to go. You know what you got? A quarterback controversy. If you're the San Francisco 49ers, do you want a quarterback controversy in a year you want to go to the Super Bowl? I wouldn't if I were in charge. I'd want one guy leading my team. So if Purdy is ready to go week 1, he goes week 1. And I think you have to target it in that direction all along. And then if he's not, you go, we were hoping, we were praying he'd be ready for week 1, but he's not. So we got to go in another direction. I think the 49ers are handling it the best that they possibly can.
I think the bigger picture of the 49ers quarterback situation is, for as much as I said, and I believe in, Kyle Shanahan has, this massive influence on the organization, more than typical head coaches do for their team in general. I don't think it's an organization that's all necessarily pulling in the same direction. And that certainly, it doesn't seem like, based on his actions, Kyle Shanahan was ever like super on board with the Trey Lance pick, as maybe that was an ownership thing or a John Lynch thing. I'm thinking,
really? You don't think they're all on the same page with that, huh?
I mean, when has Kyle Shanahan wanted to put Trey Lance on the field?
Here's one where I'll give John all the credit for, because he's been saying this forever. Kyle Shanahan is like a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
He can fall in love 1 minute, and 10 minutes later, you can be in love with somebody else.
Yeah.
That I believe that on the day that they drafted Trey Lance, he thought Trey Lance was going to be a multiple MVP winner in this league. And then Trey Lance hasn't lived up to his expectations. So it's like, next, move on, next. How about that Brock Purdy? Next. That's Shanahan.
And we had
my guy, I stick by him kind of guy.
We had Clark Judge on the show. He used to cover the 49ers. It's still close with the organization. He agreed with that. I mean, Kyle's John Gruden. John Gruden used to do that. He used to fall in love with the quarterback and then fall immediately out of love. I think that's Kyle Shanahan. But to Jody's quarterback controversy point, he never has a problem with it any other year. So in Jody's scenario, if Trey Lance starts 3-1, well, 4-0, it's easy. He keeps playing.
Right.
3-1, it gets a little bit more, and he plays okay. Maybe you lose a game you're not supposed to lose. It's a little bit more difficult, but I'd say you hold on for one more loss, and then if they lose, he's out. And you go back to Purdy. I don't think it's as difficult. And then obviously if he craps the bed 2-2, 1-3, it's even easier. You just go back to Brock Purdy. I think that's why I think it's a perfect situation for them to navigate. And for some reason, they're going and putting all this pressure on a kid who's got UCL surgery in late January. And you're saying, where are we? July 14th? Oh, he's going to be ready. And by the way, you can go back a month to June 14th. Oh, he's going to be fine. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
But remember, John, they don't kick off till September 10th. We're sitting there in July. They don't play a game for 2 months.
No, but that's my point. It's like, why put the pressure on the kid that you're going to be ready? That's kind of my point. You don't have to at this point. Maybe he is ready. But I guess my point is, why in July are you putting these trial balloons out there when you don't need to? I don't think it's very smart. I think Nick is smart with that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, yes, he takes the competitive advantage stuff way too far to a ludicrous degree. But he'll say it about Sean Desai, right? BLG, you heard that. He's like, they're playing the same stinking defensive philosophy, but he doesn't want to say it. He brought back, if you go back to that first game against Atlanta, what did he say? People don't know what we're going to do. Well, they really do, but he thinks they don't. And he tries to use that as an advantage. I got no problem with it. I think it's a smart way to go about your business.
Yeah. To go back to the 49ers a little bit for a second there. I mean, it's also kind of like unfair to Brock Purdy in the sense of too, like, well, first of all, how much time is he going to have to prepare? Like, if he's ready for week one, like, what does that mean? Like, how much of camp is he getting in, and how much is he able to build up? And
can I interject?
Sure.
Comparison of snaps in preseason games: Jalen Hurts to Brock Purdy. How many more snaps? How many more snaps is Jalen going to get than Brock Purdy in preseason?
It's not just the games, though. It's like the practices. I mean, I feel like you have to practice a little bit.
Yeah, and it might be 0 versus 0, by the way.
I think he'll be practicing. We might not say that San Francisco guys will get the same amount of time, 100 minutes, that you guys get to be able to judge. But my guess is Purdy will be out there practicing, and his teammates will never touch him.
Is Brock Purdy definitely good? I guess this is still what I'm wondering too. I mean, I think he did impressive things last year for sure, but this is like the big thing where everyone talked about it after Chip Kelly's first season. It was like, now the league gets to watch him and gets to adjust, unlike the way they could in season, where certainly, they're watching the film, they're trying to make some adjustments, but it's different when you have like a week or so versus a whole offseason of being able to study what he did. And obviously there's some level of, it's just Shanahan, because it doesn't always matter what quarterback is back there. You think
the league's going to catch up with him this year, huh?
I'm asking, like, how good is Brock Purdy, and do we see some of those limitations manifest? And also, is the fact that I think this kind of gets underrated or underplayed when talking about his injury and everything. He's a small guy. Like, that's not irrelevant. Like, I think ideally, in a perfect world, you want a quarterback who's bigger, or at least strong, like Jalen Hurts is, who can kind of handle that beating. I don't think Brock Purdy is that guy.
Yeah, we never talk about Jalen Hurts now. It's amazing, Brandon. We've been talking about this. All we talked about this year leading up to training camp was, what's Jalen Hurts got to do? Is he the guy? What's he got to do this season? Eagles kicked the can back with the drafts, picks again. They had made the calls on Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, trying to hit the home run at the position. All of these questions surrounding Jalen Hurts. And now, 12 calendar months later, there are no questions. Nobody even brings the guy up, because that's the kind of year he had. Most things in life, it's somewhere in the middle. Should we be questioning anything about Jalen Hurts entering training camp?
The way I like to think about things a lot of the time is, has this person or player or team or coach or GM or president or owner or whatever, have they earned the benefit of the doubt? And I think Jalen Hurts clearly has with his performance last season. Barring some kind of obvious disaster training camp, maybe a little bit similar to, Carson Wentz did not look good prior to the 2020 season. I stand by. I felt that way. I didn't know what to make of it at the time because I didn't want to put too much stock in the practice, but he didn't look good. And that was very clear in hindsight as well. If Jalen Hurts can avoid anything like that, I think it's pretty safe to say that you can just kind of give him that benefit of the doubt.
Just double check something. On ESPN's websites, Brock Purdy 6'1", 220, Jalen Hurts 6'1", 223.
Okay, but you tell me that this is
Jalen
Brock Purdy
lack of size too?
I wouldn't put I say all the time. I wouldn't put much stock in some of those listings, Jody. Like I always thought, what people say, I would always say, and Brandon knows, who's bigger, Isaac Seumalo or Cam Jurgens, Brandon?
Seumalo, easily.
Yeah, but not right. From the roster.
Yeah,
and people will always come back at me. Well, Cam's 305, Isaac's 305. Now they're not the same size. The Kobe Dean, they list the Kobe Dean, Brandon. I'm looking, I got my roster. 231.
And what's the
height?
When's
the last time that guy saw 231? I wish I'd get to 231, but I don't think the Kobe I wouldn't put Jalen Hurts. I mean, look at Jalen Hurts next to Brock Purdy, Jody. One
Right.
is
I'm just
stocky.
saying, we're not, none of the three of us are 49er beat reporters. We're not in the locker room all the time. I never thought of Brock Purdy as small. He's not 6'5", 240 like Josh Allen, but there are 6'1" quarterbacks in the league that are winning every year. One was the runner-up for MVP last year. So I was surprised by your statement that Brock Purdy was small, therefore he's going to get hurt again. That's just
the number one overall pick wishes he was 6'1". He's like 5'10".
He's small.
Yeah, he's really small. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the size. I do think, well, first of all, he was 7-0, I think. What was he? 7-0, right, Jody?
8 if you had the playoff game.
8
before he got hurt against the Eagles.
And he came into that one game early. Like he didn't start, but he came into that one game early when Garoppolo got hurt, I believe.
And he would have led the league in passer rating if he had enough
qualified, right?
If he qualified. So there is going to be regression. I mean, if he plays 17, let's say he's there week 1 and he plays 17 games, he's not going to go undefeated. I guess he could lead the league in passer rating, but I doubt it when you get to some of the top tier guys over that large of a sample size. He deserves it's a small sample size, but he deserves a benefit. And Jody's a big fan. I've been harsher on him. He deserves the benefit of the doubt to at least go out there and try it. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be some regression. He can't keep up that pace. That's only logical. But I do feel, and everybody does this, and I just cringing, Eagles 49. So he's quarterback versus quarterback. If it's quarterback versus quarterback, I'm going Eagles over 49ers. I mean, I think we could all agree with that, can't we? Mm-hmm. We're not saying he's Jalen Hurts level, but maybe that's an indication. None of us thought Jalen Hurts would turn into Jalen Hurts.
Now you just have to hope that's not the case if they play each other in the playoffs, because Taylor Heineke beat Jalen Hurts last year. None of us could figure out why, but it did happen.
Because there's other players on the field. It's not always quarterback versus quarterback.
We don't know if when the 49ers and Eagles play, hopefully twice this year, if it'll come down to quarterback versus quarterback, or if it'll come down to team versus team. That's what we have to wait for. All right, BLG, what are you doing this week before you got to go back to work next week?
I'm going down to the Chesapeake Bay. Gonna do some relaxing.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah. You a big seafood guy?
Not necessarily, but I dabble sometimes.
That's why I thought everybody went to the Chesapeake Bay, because they got the best seafood in the world.
Yeah.
Might have to.
All right. Yeah. Dig on in, brother. Thanks much for hopping in with us. Well, we're going to be calling on you plenty during the season. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Brandon. At Brandon Gowton, by the way. Follow Brandon. I got to ask people if they're on Threads yet. Everybody's leaving Twitter for Threads, Jody. At Brandon Gowton.
Yeah, Mac now did that over the weekend. I'm staying on Twitter.
So
I
never
got had both. A blue check mark.
Both.
I don't care if I have a blue check mark. I don't care how the new head honcho is running it. I'm not leaving Twitter anytime soon. But that's just me. He's John McMahon. I'm Jody McDonald. We are Birds 365. Coming up in less than 20 minutes now, Hunter Brody. We're going to talk to him about the Eagles, but we may talk to him about what he's going to be doing other than talking about the Eagles over the next couple months, couple years. Hunter Brody up next on Birds 365.
Do you